What's up, guys? Welcome back to episode number 3 and the conclusion to the WRC Widebody Resurrection. Alright, jumping right back into it. As you can see, after the last episode, I already went ahead and primed the new wheel tubs on the car. And coming down here, I actually applied a base coat of rocker guard on the entire inside of the rear wheel well area just to prevent any stone chips from happening. I also went ahead and reinstalled the rear doors back on the car to make sure that the alignment of the quarter panels is in the proper position when I go to bond them onto the car. Speaking of the quarter panel, I have it sitting right here ready to go. Here you can see I have a wide assortment of clamps that I'm going to use to clamp the quarter panel into place. And I'm going to be using this 2-part epoxy adhesive to bond the quarter panel to the car. This is actually the same stuff that I used on the carbon fiber roof last year when I put that on the car. So without further ado, let's get this new quarter panel mounted on the car. Alright, so here you can see all of the clamps positioned around the entire perimeter of the quarter panel. And you'll see between the C-pillar and the quarter panel here, I actually used an excessive amount of the epoxy adhesive and used self-tapping screws to clamp the two panels together, as you can't really use any other type of clamp and really need a way to make sure that these panels stay bonded really tightly during the curing process. But this has already been sitting for about 7 hours now, which means the adhesive is fully cured. And we can go ahead and remove these clamps and remove these screws from the car. Alright, that's going to do it for removing the clamps and screws from the quarter panel. But everything cured really nicely. The alignment is as good as it's going to get. You'll see here with the back door closed, alignment between the quarter panel and the door is really straight. Even back here, I don't know if you can see this, but alignment again between the door and the quarter panel is all consistent. Everything looks good. Now, of course, when I go ahead and install all the hardware in the rear door and install the striker on the door, I can then make some fine-tuning adjustments to make sure that everything closes and is aligned 100% perfect. But now it's time for my most favorite thing in the world to do to a car, more than anything else, and that is bodywork. Not so much. It's one of my least favorite things to do. You know, I've probably been doing bodywork now for 20 years maybe, and it definitely takes almost that long to really pick up the skills to do it properly. But it's still my least favorite thing to do to a car. But when you get involved with a big project like this, it's just one of those things that has to get done. So what I'm going to do is start off by mixing some fiberglass body filler to close this gap between the quarter panel and the C-pillar, as well as fill these holes from the screws that I just drilled. I'm also going to add some filler between the quarter panel and the rocker panel, and same thing with down here in the rear wheel well area between the outer wheel tub and the quarter panel. I'll put a seam of filler right along this edge here. Another thing you might have noticed during the installation of these quarter panels is this random line that is running along the top edge of the quarter panel here. And that is actually part of the molding process, as these quarter panels are made in a 2-part mold. And this is just where the epoxy resin has escaped the mold. And this is kind of just sitting on top of the surface. So I just need to sand this line out of the quarter panel. I might need to add some body filler, but hopefully I can get away without adding any filler in that area there. But I guess there's nothing really more to say. Time to start doing some body work, I guess. Alright, so as you just saw, I got the fiberglass body filler laid around the entire quarter panel. I sanded everything with my DA using a combination of 40 and 80 grit sandpaper, and already the quarter panel to C-pillar area is almost 100% perfect as far as level and lining everything up. Same thing here with the door jamb and moving down here to where the quarter panel meets the rocker. Everything's perfectly level, nice and straight. That turned out really good. Even here in the wheel well, you can see I got a seam of filler all the way down here, and that turned out perfectly. So the next step to do is actually add body filler. I'm gonna basically put some body filler over top of the C-pillar quarter panel area here and actually block sand from this point forward. You don't really want to use a DA or even hand sand, because trust me, I've learned the hard way many times in the past, it will be wavy as hell. So like I said, gonna block sand everything out in the C-pillar area. I'm not really too concerned about the door jamb. Same thing with down in this area, it's already pretty close. It's gonna be a light skim coat of body filler and that should do it. This line back here, I did try to sand it out with the DA. Unfortunately, this outer layer of the quarter panel is just a millimeter or two higher than this part here, so I'm gonna actually have to add a light coat of body filler just to close out this line here, but not really a big deal. I guess let's get back to this body work and get it over with. And that is going to do it for all of the body work on the rear quarter panels. So again, going back, you can see where I added the body filler and fiberglass filler to blend the C-pillar to the quarter panel. That turned out really good. Same thing back here, I had to put a skim coat of body filler just to get rid of that line from the mold making process. That turned out really nice. And even down here, where the quarter panel blends right into the rocker panel, everything's nice and smooth and seamless. Only thing left I've got to do now is give everything a coat of primer. And I'm definitely going to paint the door jambs World Rally Blue. I haven't decided what I'm doing with the quarter panels yet, but you guys are just going to have to wait and see, and we'll talk about that later. But let's jump to the front of the car. So I've got both of the fenders down here for comparison to give you guys an idea of the difference of the new WRC kit to the previous replica kit. And obviously the biggest thing that stands out right away is the height of the wheel arches. So looking at the previous fender I had installed on the car, you can see the height from the wheel arch to the top edge of the fender here is actually about close to 4 inches, whereas on this fender it's about an inch, inch and a quarter. But it might be hard to see on the camera, but it's actually even higher on this fender, as the top edge of this fender is higher up than that fender. So huge difference with the wheel arch height on these new fenders. Another big difference as well is the width of the fender. So if I show you this fender here, if you can see that the width from here to the edge of the fender is, again, maybe about 4.5 inches. And then when I show you the width on this fender, if you can see that, it's got to be closer to 5.5, maybe even 6 inches. So a lot wider of a fender, also a bit of a different design, but really happy to jump with this new design. It's going to change the entire look of the car. So let's get the hood put up here, and we can start installing these new fenders. So I've already taken a bit of a head start with the front fenders by pre-drilling all of the holes in order to mount the fender. I just drilled a basic size hole for now. The holes are definitely going to need to be a little bit bigger, so but the fender should be pretty straightforward install. It shouldn't be too bad. You can see here too, there's a line on the leading edge of this fender. Again, more body work needed on these fenders, but not too big of a deal. Let's get these fenders mounted on the car. look at this. Got the fender all mounted up. Looks amazing. Super, super wide. It's so cool to actually see it on the car. I don't know how much you can actually see from the video, but it is really aggressive looking fender. Try and even come back here. You know, again, super wide. Definitely a lot wider than the previous fender that I had on the car, but looks absolutely amazing. Now you can see the gap between the hood and the fender here. Obviously I've got to align it a little bit still, but yeah, this looks amazing. Let's get the driver's fender mounted on the car and then see how it looks with both of them on there. All right, got the driver's side front fender all mounted up. Man, it's so crazy how wide these fenders are compared to the previous fenders I had on the car, and I thought those were wide. Let's close the hood and see how this looks from here. Man, that looks wicked. I don't know if you guys can see that from here, but that is, let's see if we can really put the camera up above here. That is super wide WRC fenders right there. Man, it's so crazy looking. You know, the car almost looks like a Baja or Pre-Runner by how wide these fenders are. You know, if you look at this edge, it just falls right off. Super wide, man. That looks so wicked. You know, I guess because there's no headlights or anything installed on the car right now, it looks really crazy. But yeah, that is gonna do it for the front fender. All right, so I guess I forgot to start recording, but as you can see, I've got the car somewhat masked up, and I've already laid down my first coat of primer on the door jambs of the new quarter panels, and everything already is looking good. Everything looks pretty seamless. It almost looks like the quarter panel was there from the factory. Now I'm not using a automotive 2K primer. What I am using is just a regular automotive primer in a spray can, as I feel it's a bit excessive and a waste of time to mask the entire car and go through the process of mixing primer and having to clean my gun out for just a tiny little rear door jamb in an area of the car that no one's ever gonna see, and it really doesn't need to be perfect. So I've already got the first coat of primer down. I'm gonna give it maybe 1 or 2 more coats of primer, and then we'll jump into the paint. And I'm using the same thing here again in a rattle can. I got this mixed at a local paint supply place, Subaru O2C World Rally Blue, and we'll get these door jambs all painted up and go from there. And that is going to do it for painting the door jambs on the brand new WRC Widebody kit. As you can see, everything turned out pretty good. Everything's blending nicely into the car now that we can see it all painted. Only thing left to do now is unmask the car. But I've got a bit of a surprise for you guys, hiding right behind the masking paper down here. And what I've done is I've already gone ahead and painted the wheel wells before I painted the door jambs. But I didn't paint the wheel wells World Rally Blue like I had on the car previously. I decided to change the color up and go with something a little bit different. And let's peel this paper off and see exactly what I'm talking about. Moment of truth to see what's hiding behind this masking paper right here. Pull this off. You guys ready for this? What does that look like to you? I see a white wheel well. Let's get the rest of this paper off. So before I pull the rest of the paper off, check this out. So here we've got our World Rally Blue door jambs and transitions into some white wheel wells. I think that looks absolutely amazing. You know, Subaru started doing this in the WRC, I believe, in late 2007. Subaru Motorsports USA is also doing this with their race cars. I absolutely love the look, how the white wheel wells contrast with the World Rally Blue paint. It looks super amazing, and I just thought with the new WRC Widebody kit, I absolutely had to do that to the car. It looks really cool, and it's gonna look really good with the car this year. But let's get the rest of this masking paper off the car and go from there. Next thing to do is get the front bumper mounted on the car. So I'm going to reinstall the bash bar on the car, and then we can start test fitting the front bumper. Let's get to it. All right, so I've got the brand new WRC front bumper out here in the garage. I've got the bash bar installed on the car. So quick comparison of the bumper. I didn't feel like grabbing the original bumper, bringing it back out here. But looking right at it, I can tell already that it's a lot wider in this area of the car. So obviously the bumper's wider to make up with the wider fenders. Also the vent opening back here. My previous bumper was connected along the back part here, whereas this one is all open. Another cool thing this bumper has on the inside are these, I don't know what you call this, skid plate or some type of a protective cover that'll go underneath. And I might have to remove those, as I don't know if those are gonna fit with my bash bar. And looking at my bash bar, right off the bat, I already know I'm gonna have to notch out the bumper to clear the tow hook. And I also know that the fog lights will definitely not clear the bumper, so for now I'm gonna have to remove the fog lights and come up with a way to make a bracket to mount the bumper. Now, if you look at this bash bar, you can already see it's already really beat up and it's all dented up here. And that's actually from last year when I had the car at SEMA with Hoonigan in their endless summer shred pit. I actually put the car up against a container and tried to do an all-wheel drive burnout and failed miserably. Of course, my engine was having major issues and I didn't realize how bad it was at the time, and my car wasn't even making any power, let alone I couldn't even get the wheels to spin. But so that said, I don't know what the future is for this bash bar. This bash bar is actually made out of DOM2. It is pretty heavy. I've always had the idea of possibly making a new one. And again, this bash bar was designed to fit my previous bumper. It was actually made to spec to fit around that bumper. And I already know right off the bat, this bumper isn't gonna fit perfectly with this bash bar. So even when I go to make the brackets, I'm probably just gonna do something quick, just because I'm also running a little bit low on time. But that said, I'm gonna get the fog lights removed off of the bash bar. I'm gonna get the front bumper here. I'm gonna get a hole cut to clear the tow hook. And then we can see if this bumper even fits or if I need to trim anything else off of it. Let's get to it. Okay, so I've got the bumper somewhat sitting on the car, and as you saw, I really had to cut a lot of the bumper away to get it to fit over the bash bar, unfortunately. One thing I'm noticing right away is how low the bash bar is actually sitting behind this new bumper. Basically what that means is my previous bumper that I had on the car came down a lot lower. It actually tucked underneath this bash bar as I designed this tube to fit inside the bumper. And I'm not too concerned about that, because I'm gonna have a rubber lip riveted to the front of the bumper, and that's actually gonna hide the bash bar. And it's actually gonna work a little bit better because on my previous bumper, the rubber lip actually sat about 1.5 inches or 2 below the bash bar. And I guess now if that rubber lip comes in contact with the ground, more than likely the bash bar is gonna bottom out first. But that said, I'm definitely gonna make a new bash bar in the near future, which means in order to get this bumper mounted on the car, I'm just gonna do something really quick for now, as there's no point in really fabbing up something as it's not gonna be permanent. So what I'm gonna do, I'm just gonna get some 1-inch flat bar, probably 1/8 thickness, and just weld a quick bracket behind this hole right here. Same thing with a bracket behind these 2 holes, and I'll just drill a couple holes, use some rib nuts, and I can just run some bolts straight in, and that'll secure the bumper to the car. And like I said, in the future, I'll make a new bash bar for the car and do something a lot better, more so designed to fit this bumper specifically and not the previous bumper I had on the car. All right, so let's get this bumper pulled off the car. I'm gonna cut some flat bar up, start tacking some things to the car, see if we can get the alignment all proper with the bumper, and go from there. Okay, so that's gonna do it for the mounting brackets for the top part of the bumper. I ended up going with 3/4 inch flat bar, bent it in a couple spots to get the right angle, and then I've got some M6 rib nuts, and that is where the top of the bumper will bolt into. I also put some rib nuts into the side of the fender up here for an extra mounting point. And the only thing left I need to do now is make a couple more mounting tabs off of the lower part of the bash bar here, and that'll secure the bottom edge of the bumper. But it's like 3 o'clock in the morning right now, time for me to go to bed. But when I come back in literally 5 seconds, we'll finish this up and get the rest of the wide body kit banged out. Okay, so as you just saw, I installed the front bumper back on the car utilizing the new brackets that I just welded to the bash bar. And as you can see now, the bumper is really secure. It's not even going anywhere, completely solid. But now we just need to address the bottom area of the bumper here. As you can see, there's some flex here as this area needs to be secured. Now, I've already pre-drilled the hole here in the bumper, and I real quickly just made up these brackets. Nothing special, just a piece of 1-inch flat bar. Drilled a couple holes in it to lighten it up or make it look cool, whatever. And it has a M6 rib nut on the end of it, which I'm going to use to secure the bumper to the bracket. This one's going to be a little bit simpler. You know, the front one I had to take the bumper off and on the car a repeated amount of times in order to position the bracket in the right spot and weld it, as I can't really get in behind the bumper with my welder. But for this one, it's going to be real simple. I'll show you how this one's going to work. And all I need to do for this one down here, as you can see, here's the hole again that I pre-drilled. And I'll just basically bolt this bracket directly to the bumper, and then all I need to do is just position it wherever I want it to land on the bash bar, give it a couple tacks, pull the bumper off, fully weld it, and that will do it for mounting the front bumper of the car. Let's get it done. Okay, so front bumper is back on the car. All of the mounting brackets worked perfectly. And as you can see, the last pair of brackets that I welded to the bash bar right here made everything absolutely sturdy. Bumper isn't going anywhere and fits perfectly. But let's jump back to the rear of the car. We'll get the rear doors installed, rear bumper, tail lights, all that stuff back there. And then we'll come back up here to the front as I have a few more last minute things to do to finish this all off. And that's gonna do it for this WRC Widebody Resurrection. Let's get to it. Okay, so now we can install the rear doors back on the car. Now I've got the rear door sitting here for the passenger side, and I've actually already gone ahead and painted the backs of the doors, and once the door panel goes on, everything should look pretty good. So once I get this door mounted onto the car, I'm gonna put all the guts back inside of it, and then we can move on to installing the glass. Let's get these doors installed. Alright, so got the rear door installed on the car. Opens and closes as it should. I don't know what else you want me to tell you on that. But now it's time to install the windows in the door. But I'm not going to be using the factory glass as I wanted to save some more weight, seeing as those rear doors are so light as it is. I ended up buying a 5-piece polycarbonate window kit from Plastics for Performance out of the UK. Now, they say that these windows are 60% lighter than the factory glass, but I don't know, if you ask me, this is closer to 80% lighter because this is just absolutely super lightweight. I also opted for their hard coating on the windows, which just reduces the chances of these windows getting scratched so easily. Now, in order to install these windows into the car, what I need to do is remove all of the brackets off of the factory glass window. I've got to drill 4 holes into the new window and then install all the brackets onto here. Then I can go ahead and install the window on the door. So I'm going to get that all done, and then we'll finish up the entire rear door installation and jump into the rest of the back of the car. and that is going to do it for installing the new polycarbonate windows from Plastic for Performance. Only thing left to do now is peel off the magic film. Good for the outside layer, and let's get the inside off. You know, in case some of you guys were wondering if these windows were blue or not, as you can see, they are not. All right. All right, so that's going to do it for installing the windows in the rear doors. I'll probably install the front windows off camera, as you don't really need to see the same thing twice. But check this out. I also had my buddy come and install the rear polycarbonate window on the car, and it fit really nice. And another thing you might notice is the window looks very clear, and the reason for that is there is no rear defrost system on this back window, which means I'm probably going to be screwed whenever this window fogs up. But you know what? In the sake of weight savings, it's worth it. You'll also notice that I've already gone ahead and installed the trunk lid on the car. One thing I did off camera is I had to modify the trunk hinges, as I had some issues last year with the trunk hinges bottoming out on the wheel tubs. Now, I tried a quick modification fix for them last year. Wasn't really happy with it. The trunk wouldn't open up very much. So this year I built some new trunk hinges. Very similar to the WRC design. I downloaded some pictures to get the basic shape, and now the trunk's got a lot more travel opening up and works really good. Another cool thing that I just did, again off camera unfortunately, is I built this really cool trunk prop. Now this is almost identical to what the WRC cars have, and I just made this out of 1/2-inch aluminum, bent it by hand, and then polished it up. It's got a rod end down in the bottom, and then you just open up the trunk. This pops into this hole right here, and just like that, it holds the trunk up. So only thing really left to do back here now is install the rear bumper, rear taillights, and of course the WRC spoiler onto the trunk. And that will do it for the back end of this wide body transformation. Let's get it done. All right, got the rear end of the car finally back together, and everything fit really nicely. Rear bumper's lining up nice with the new brackets and everything that I made in there. Got the WRC spoiler back on the car, tail lights, everything's fitting really nice, and starting to look like a car again. You know, it's probably a little bit hard to see what's going on without the wheels or suspension installed, but soon enough, we're almost there. Let's jump back to the front. Only thing left to do up here is just get the front fenders back installed on the car, get the headlights and bumper installed on the car, and there's only one thing left to finish off this whole WRC wide body kit, so let's get to it. All right, guys, what do you think? Got the entire front end of the car back together. Absolutely love this new wide body kit. Really starting to look like a proper WRC car now. Everything fit really nice, of course. One thing I did do off camera, I had to do a little bit of body work on these lines on the front fenders, and down here on the front bumper needed a little bit of work, and then I gave everything a few coats of semi-gloss black lacquer finish. One thing I didn't show you guys yet, I don't think, but I actually left the original WRC livery wrap on the driver's side door. I thought it was kind of funny. It almost looks like it has a used door off of a rally car installed on it. Another thing too, actually, I did also paint the wheel wells white in the front here, if you didn't notice that yet. But again, once all the suspension and the wheels are installed, it's gonna look really good to get this car back down on the ground. So now there's only one thing left to do to finish off this kit. Well, technically two things. I still have to drill some holes in the front bumper and install my rubber lip, especially since this bash bar is so low now compared to where it used to be before. But the main thing I need to do now to finish off this entire WRC Widebody resurrection, and that is the side skirts. Now I've got the new side skirts sitting right here. Now you'll see on these side skirts there's a single hole here in the center, but there isn't one at the front or the back. Now these skirts actually did come with the holes already pre-drilled. Unfortunately, when I went to go install them onto the car, the sill stand tubes that I previously welded on were about 1.5 inches in the wrong position, both the front and the rear. So what I actually had to do was weld and extend these a little bit longer, just because again, these tubes were designed for the previous WRC replica skirts that I had installed on the car. And now that the holes are in a different spot on these skirts, what I actually did, add some carbon fiber fabric and epoxy resin into the carbon Kevlar skirts here to kind of delete those blank holes. Use some body filler, of course, on the top side here to make everything all nice and smooth. Here at the front, there's also another hole back here. And now that that's done, I can go ahead and install the skirts on the car. I've got to figure out where I need to drill the new holes to position the skirt over top of the sill stand tube. And that's going to do it. So let's get these skirts on the car and close this out. Alright, so that's going to do it for getting these side skirts mounted on the car. It's a little tricky to figure out exactly where these holes needed to be, but what I did was took a bunch of measurements on the horizontal and vertical axis, started off with a center hole, opened up the hole gradually until I was happy with it fitting over top of the tube. You can see here as well I drew a line. I'm going to cut these a little bit shorter as they're still a little long, but I will do that afterwards. But yeah, that is going to do it for this wicked WRC Widebody resurrection. I could not be happier with how the car is really starting to turn out. Now, of course, once the suspension and wheels go back in the car and this car is sitting on the ground, back under its own weight, then we'll really see how wild it's starting to look. I don't know what else to say, so thanks again, guys, for watching, and I will see you in the next episode.